Welcome to the Bread Kitchen. You'll see a lot of recipes for pumpkin bread that use a lot of sugar and a lot of eggs, and to me that makes it a cake. In this video I'm going to show you how to make a proper pumpkin bread. To make my pumpkin bread I've got a 500 gram chunk of pumpkin. You can use pumpkin puree from a can and I'll come to that later. 450 grams of bread flour, 25 grams of melted butter, 25 grams of sugar, an egg, 1 teaspoon of salt and 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg, 2 teaspoons of yeast, and into my loaf I'm going to add 50 grams of walnut pieces. These are purely optional, you can leave them out if you wish. I'll start with the pumpkin and I want to scoop out the seeds and all this fibrous matter. Now I find it easier to peel a pumpkin if you cut it into strips, thin strips. Now peel the pumpkin with a vegetable peeler, then cut the peeled slices of pumpkin into chunks. Okay, put the pumpkin in a pan and add enough water to cover it by about 1 inch. Bring to the boil. Once it comes to the boil, turn the heat right down, cover and simmer for about 20 minutes until the pumpkin's really tender. Once the pumpkin's nice and tender and you can test it with a skewer, drain it. Now I'm going to put the pumpkin back into the pan and mash it, but you could easily use a food processor too. I want to end up with a nice puree. What you should end up with is between 350 and 400 grams of nice sloppy puree. I'm just going to leave this to cool. Now if you don't have access to fresh pumpkin or you can't be bothered, now would be a good time to open up a tin of pumpkin puree. To 100 ml of lukewarm water I'm going to add the sugar and the yeast. I'll stir it until all the sugar's dissolved. Now I'll leave it for 10 minutes for the yeast to activate. Put the flour in a bowl together with the salt and the nutmeg and just mix it all together. Break the egg into a bowl and beat it and add it into the flour together with the melted butter, the yeast water and about 200 grams of the pumpkin puree, and mix it all together to a dough. And after a couple of minutes of mixing, it will take a couple of minutes, it should come together into a slightly tacky but very soft dough. Now if your dough's too dry, just add in a bit more pumpkin puree. If it's too soft and tacky, just add in a spoonful of flour. Put the dough on a well-floured surface and knead for 10 minutes. So after 10 minutes of kneading, you should end up with a soft and springy dough. Now pop the dough into a lightly greased bowl, cover, and then we'll pop this in a warm place until it doubles in size. Once the dough's risen, we can turn it out onto a lightly floured surface. Knock it back, get out any air bubbles. Now if you're going to add walnuts into this loaf, this is the time to add them. So I've got my broken walnuts. Fold them in. Now I'm going to knead this dough for 2 to 3 minutes to distribute the walnuts throughout the dough. If you weren't adding walnuts, just knead the dough for 2 or 3 minutes. Now when you've kneaded the dough, you can bake it in any shape you like. I'm going to bake mine in a loaf tin. So I'm just going to kind of press it out into a slug shape. Now I've got a baking tin here, it's 8 inches by 4 inches, but it's quite deep, it's 4 inches deep. I'm going to pop the dough into here, plop, press it in, I'll pop it in my trusty plastic bag, and then I'm going to leave it in a warm place for it to rise and fill the tin. You can see this has risen beautifully in the tin. So I'm now going to bake this at 190 fan oven, 220 degrees C normal oven for about 35 minutes. And here we are after 30 minutes, lovely brown top. I'll just take it out of the tin. And there we are, lovely brown top, golden sides, and I'm just going to leave this to cool. This loaf is lovely and soft and has a slightly sweet taste. The bread makes really good sandwiches and toast. Now if you follow this recipe precisely, you'll probably find that you've got quite a bit of pumpkin puree left. Well, you can either put it into some soup or make another pumpkin bread loaf, or you can watch my next video in which I'll show you how to make these absolutely cute pumpkin bread dinner rolls. I hope you enjoy making your pumpkin bread, and do join me next time in the bread kitchen.